I'm going to dive into a few of the anonymous questions we've had. There have been some really good and pretty meaningful and difficult questions. So I also don't presume to have the perfect answer. In fact, I anticipate when I finish my video, I'm certain there will be things that I'll even think about immediately that I would answer differently. And so I'll just do my best and give you some things to think about and encourage you to continue to study it out on your own and ask of others that you trust and professionals or mentors to help you answer some of these questions too. One of the questions that came in was how do you tell the difference between a stupor of thought versus a doubt, particularly in kind of that decision of who to marry. One of the first things that came to my mind was something I heard years ago, and I wish I could give credit to who it was that originally said it. Kind of a church speaker, more not a general authority, but more kind of an EFY kind of speaker. But what they had shared, they talked about just that difficult time that we often have that we don't know. Am I getting an answer from the Spirit? Is it my own thoughts? And so he kind of gave an analogy, and he said that answers from prayer are sometimes like a stoplight, red, yellow, and green. He said we can generally most of us know when we get a green light, an overwhelming yes, this is right, move ahead, as well as if we get a red light. If you were to go into a bar, try and do some particularly some behavior that contradicts your values, you might immediately be able to sense I'm in the wrong place, I'm not doing the right thing. But he said, what do you do with those yellow light moments? And he said that he's like, I treat them like I treat yellow lights when I'm driving. I just keep moving forward and trust that if Heavenly Father wants me to stop, that He'll give me a red light. Certainly assuming that, as we're supposed to study things out in our own mind anyways, that you've already gone through the study of deciding if this is right or if it's wrong by using the knowledge you have, the studies that you have, the principles you're learning this semester in class, for example, and you're not putting yourself in a situation where you already know it's not a good situation, but you're praying and hoping that Heavenly Father will still say yes, move ahead. I don't think in those we ought to keep moving forward with them. I think Heavenly Father may not always give us a blaring no if He knows that we already know the answer. But otherwise, if we're trying to do the right thing and we're doing everything that's right, it's kind of I'm trying to get a good answer, and I don't think I've gotten a no, so let me move forward. So that's one just kind of analogy I like with kind of following answers to prayer in general. When you're thinking about doubt specifically to marriage, I do think there's a difference between having just cold feet about marriage, just our general anxiety about marriage. It's a big decision. It's going to be difficult. It's got its ups and downs. So it's pretty normal to have kind of just general cold feet, as we would say. Most people going into marriage have a little bit of that. But I think a general kind of anxiety about the big decision is different than when you have a specific doubt or concern. That if you have evidence, reason, let's say you were reading this book or some other way studying something out, and you see a red flag in your partner. I know studies show that those individuals who have significant doubts about their potential marriage partner and then end up marrying them without resolving those have a much higher divorce rate. And I would say so that tells me probably the most important thing is make sure you resolve that doubt. If you're worried it might be a stupor of thought, an answer from prayer saying don't do this, or Heavenly Father saying don't do this, or if it might just be your own anxiety, either way, it's important to do your best to resolve that. Because what I've seen is every marriage will have its challenges. Every marriage is going to have times when you doubt whether or not you married the right person. And if there's a premarital doubt, you can go back to and say, well, I really thought I shouldn't because of this issue. And I never really resolved that. I just moved forward into marriage. That's kind of a wedge. There was a conference talk years ago about an analogy where somebody left a wedge in a tree and the tree grew around it and that became a weak spot. And that's what I would say that, just at that tree where then it could break pretty easily later on. It's the same kind of thing here. To try and do your best to resolve it, to maybe get some premarital counseling if you're really uncertain, reading good books, studying it out, asking other people. Because whether it was your own anxiety or Heavenly Father, if you don't resolve it, it's going to be a weak spot in your marriage. And again, I think the difference between likely what is just general anxiety and a significant doubt is usually have specific issues and evidence of concern. So I hope that gives a little thought on that one. Then another question was, how do I avoid attracting partners that I don't want or am not interested in? I, I would hope to some extent, as you've read Van Ep's book, you've started to maybe realize one answer to that, um, is that sometimes we attract people by not following the relationship attachment model, by trying to give them second, third, fourth, fifth chances. Um, but I think overall, what we could always look at is, and I don't mean this in a really negative, self-critical way, but there always is some sense of looking back and saying, okay, is there something I'm doing, something about me, not as in I'm a bad person, but do I send some kind of message that I'm interested in I don't know, the wild guy? Um, is there something in my behavior or maybe it's a matter of who I select to date and needing to learn some of those warning signs and how do I pick up on it sooner. Um, again, that might be one where if it really is a significant concern and a pattern that goes on, maybe going in to do some counseling, or continuing to read other marriage prep books to find out, some of that self-reflection of what could I be doing differently to send a different message. It's a hard one to answer for me without real specifics and sitting down with someone and saying, well, let's talk about what the patterns are and what you're doing and what kind of guys. So I apologize that I can't be probably more specific than I would if it was a client that I could get more discussion with. Next one was kind of the idea of, are guys really scared of commitment nowadays, or is that just an excuse? And kind of another part of that same question was how to make marriage less scary. Um, I do think, I'm not sure, we certainly see probably that stereotype of maybe guys and saying they're scared of commitment. I do think in general we see a growing trend of men and women being a little more scared of commitment. I think part of the reason for that is our society continues to send more often than not a negative view of marriage. That it talks about the increasing divorce rate and we see the bad stories. So I think some of the focus of news and just general pop culture on marriage is not very reassuring. So it's easy to start to get scared of commitment to marriage because of what we see in the news. I think part of how to then combat that is some good education. For example, when you look at the stats about divorce, most people, if you ask what's the divorce rate, they'll say at least 50% of marriages divorce. That's actually not true. That is a kind of a prediction rate. We've never hit a time where 50% of marriages actually divorce, but it's somewhat of a projection of what they'd anticipate. It's also a mix of a lot of different statistics of different individuals. So, for example, if you are college educated, you have particularly for a female, have a college education, it significantly drops that divorce rate. And so there are a lot of different things. Say, well, maybe if I looked at my upbringing, my parents' marriage, my education, my socioeconomic class, those kinds of things, my projected divorce rate might be as low as in the teens, and others might be higher. So learning a little bit more about understanding that divorce rate, I think helps calm some of those fears. And then just generally learning about what makes marriages strong. I think knowledge is power. And the more that I know about what can create a strong marriage, then the less scared I should be of marriage because I might have some ability to influence that. It's not just this random, I'll get married and I'm rolling a dice and I hope I don't get divorced. There are a lot of things we can do to make sure we have a strong marriage. So I would say hopefully taking this class and taking other classes, reading good books, learning about great information about strong marriages can calm a lot of those fears. So overall, I'm sure commitment fears can be used as an excuse because it's somewhat generally acceptable that a lot of people are going to be scared of marriage. But I do think overall we do see that's not usually just an excuse. I think there is a growing fear of marriage, and there's some great ways to be able to combat that. So those are just a few questions I thought I would answer. Like I said, there's several more. I'll try and get to them throughout the next few weeks.